Amir, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us here. First of all, where are you, Amir, the CEO of Doist? Where are you joining us from? The best to you and yours. Are you healthy? The family's healthy? Everything good? Because I believe you're in Spain, right? Which is where I live as well. And obviously, we've seen a lot of challenges in Spain.
Yeah, I'm luckily not in Spain. So I
Okay.
usually live in Barcelona, but my wife
Same.
is from Chile. So yeah, I'm currently in Santiago, Chile. Yeah.
Yeah, and same thing from my point of view. Well, thanks so much for taking time to chat with us today, and I'll let you take it from here, Amir. Thank you again, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Danny.
Give it up for him.
I'm happy to be here. It's kind of a different environment than we are used to, but yeah, let's try this out.
Right, let's do it.
Yeah. Hello, folks. I hope the quality is good. My internet has usually been a bit bad, so I hope this will be okay. And I have also done a bit hasty presentation that I can just go through, and then I can also show you how we actually use asynchronous communication as the default. So I can actually give you a preview of what this looks like. You can see in the face as well. Yeah, is this good? Oh, I hope it's good. So let me just share a bit with you. I will actually do this like this. The thing for us, I have actually been promoting asynchronous communication for a long time. And for me, it's not really like selling a product. It's more just I think the philosophy is much better, and I think it results in happier lives and better work. And I think if you look at around, there's right now a promotion of asynchronous communication, and this is promoted by most of the remote first companies, such as Zapier, Basecamp, Buffer, GitLab. And I think this is really the key to be successful remotely, is kind of to adopt asynchronous communication as default. And honestly, I don't really care what tools you use for this. I think you can use almost any tool. So let me just explain to you why, and also a bit about this. So basically, we are 75 full-time people. Okay, I just got a note. So basically, we are 75 full-time people spread around the world. We have 20 part-time people and 30 different countries, and we have been for a long time. I think personally, I have worked in a remote environment for more than 10 years. And we are best known for Doist, which is a to-do app, and Twist, which is our team communication app. So something to know is we have had some experience with Slack, and actually we were some of the first adopters of this. And I think Slack is an amazing product, and they have done a lot of stuff well. But I think it's just a horrible communication model. And I think this is kind of a broken model, especially for remote work and especially for future of work. And especially if you combine this with Zoom, I think you kind of have a very lethal model that will not result in happy lives, that will not result in great work. So I will just list some of the issues that we found, and we have more than 1 year history with Slack. So one of the issues is kind of time zones, and the problem with time is kind of in a synchronous model, you need to have synchronized time. You need to be online at the same time to be able to communicate. But this becomes challenging if you actually want to have a fully distributed team across the world. Yeah, I will actually switch the slide because I can't really see the comments if I do that. I will just increase them so you can see them. That does not really work as I don't. Yeah, so time zones are a problem. And another issue is also requiring people to work in a schedule is also anti I think modern work, because maybe you're not most creative at 7 a.m. in the morning. Maybe you're most creative at 7 p.m. in the night, or at 1 a.m. in the night. So synchronizing time kind of works if you're in a factory, but I think for modern knowledge work, this shouldn't really be a problem. And it is a problem if you have synchronous communication as a default. Another problem is basically like it's very addictive. So basically the patterns they use is kind of just like to addict you. And if you look at the studies, like some are, the average is kind of 10 hours or more connected inside these apps. And that's just awful. Another problem is basically like shallow thinking and like one-line thinking. Like, inside a chat, it goes very fast, and it's also usually just like one-liners that are posted around. Um, and I don't really think like this is how you do your best work. Like, I think you actually need to go deep and think about a problem and then present that problem instead of just like being connected all the time and like promoting this like one-line shallow thinking. Another problem is it promotes a fast culture. And honestly, like I think most of us are running a marathon and not really a sprint. And not everything should be done like as soon as possible. So at least for us, like we actually want to have a slower culture that's kind of based on doing great, deep, thoughtful work than just like getting stuff done in a fast way. Of course, like some companies, they want to have like ASCP culture all around. But I think that's a problem. Yeah, and when you have like fast communication, fast culture, like fear of missing out is real. And I really felt this when I worked in this environment because we have people spread around the world, and I could basically like work all the time, and I would wake up at like 3 a.m. and check the Slack to see if like I was missing out of an important conversation, or just like I think there's something psychological, like if you miss out a conversation on Slack, it's basically gone forever. And the same thing goes with meetings. Like, meetings are also awful because they're synchronous, and you can't really like if you're not in a meeting, you're not going to be part of like the decision making process or like the thought process that happens. And then the other problem is basically like chat alone isn't enough. And usually like these organizations, they mix chat with like email or like a Basecamp or like Zoom. So you basically have like a structure where you have like you know, uh, like just communication information spread around in different tools. And this isn't really super useful. So that's why at some point, like when you actually discover all of these issues, you're kind of like, there must be a better way to do this. And there's a better way. And the better way is basically to communicate asynchronously as the default manner. Um, and I have just like listed some of the stuff that this allows you. But one of the most core stuff is that the default communication kind of becomes like deep. You basically, are deeply working together instead of like this shallow working where, it's just about like being online and chatting instead of like really going in and like solving hard problems, thinking about hard problems and presenting like solutions to hard problems. Another great thing is like time zones aren't really a problem anymore because in asynchronous model you don't need to be connected all the time. You can actually go in and out as you please, and you can structure your days as you please. And this also allows, like for instance, our CTO Gonzalo, like he's a night person, so he actually works during the night, and he has done that like throughout our history, mostly. But like in an asynchronous model, I think this fits him much more because he can basically like work without really expecting like other people to work as well at the same time as him. And of course, like time zones, like we have people spread around the world, like this is actually a requirement. Another thing that is also like very common if you have like synchronous communication as default is that you are blocked a lot of the time. And an asynchronous model, you're actually blocked by default. So you actually need to like learn to live with this and kind of like structure your communication and your processes around this. So for instance, like when you deliver like a comment or like a message to somebody or like a pull request, you have to like provide a lot more context to them as the default. If not, like they can't just like message you and get an answer from you. Yeah, so that's kind of like a very, I think, important thing, and probably something that a lot of like synchronous organizations are struggling with. Lastly, I think like people in like asynchronous cultures are much happier because they can kind of structure their days to how they please. They can basically plan their days how they please. And if you look at like the retention, employee retention for like most of these like remote first, fully distributed companies, it's actually like insane. I think like Zapier, us, Basecamp, Buffer, GitLab, like it's retention over 90% over like many years. And in like tech world, this is kind of like unheard of. So I think this kind of tells you a bit like that, people are actually happier, and I think also they do better work in these kinds of environments. Of course, there's like a component, and I've actually written about this kind of like the mental issues of this model. Like there are some, like this isn't like the core way we are kind of built. Like we are built, as social animals, and yeah, the body language and stuff like that is very important for us. But even with like the mental issues, I still think like all the benefits are kind of outweigh the bad things about this model. So what is kind of like the thing I'm promoting, and I think something that's very important is like you shouldn't be async 100%. Like this does not really work. We have tried it out, and like culturally, like some things actually need to be done in a real-time manner. For instance, like one-on-one calls with people, I would do them in real time in a meeting. And like also providing somebody like harsh feedback, I would also do that in a meeting. This said, like if you can just like adjust, so like asynchronous, like at least 50% of your communication, I think you have gone like a huge step forward. And I think also, like, of course, we can't really do this now, but like retreats, like face-to-face meetings, etc., are also very critical for even a fully distributed organization, because we like you can still connect with people a lot more with like some beers and a dinner. Yeah. So lastly, I actually want to show you how we use Twist. And like Twist is kind of like our asynchronous tool that we use, but I think you can do the same thing with Twist in like GitHub, GitLab, or Basecamp, or whatever else like you can use. I think the idea of like asynchronous default is much more important than what the tool you use. So before I start, I will actually just show you what asynchronous first enables. So this is actually like my weekly meeting plans. So you can see like I have very few meetings. I actually only have like 3 meetings with my team. And I don't think this is very common. And I think this is something that's like really, really nice. And I also have like a lot of times like just days where I don't have a single meeting. So this makes it possible for me to write, to think, to think deeply about stuff. And this isn't like really uncommon week for me. So this is basically it, and this is something I cherish a lot. Yeah, so let's go back and let me just show you how we use Twist. So basically something to note, I'm actually unsure like if there's any secrets here. I hope there isn't. And I haven't really like prepared this. So first of all, like most of our communication is public. So we only have a few channels that are actually like private. So we have the CXO and Doist Finance, and everything else is kind of like public. So if you go into a channel here that's Bridge, where we basically like discuss like high-level company stuff, you can actually go in and everybody can go in and actually see the discussions and etc. Yeah, so I think this is kind of like a very like nice way, and maybe also something you should promote is kind of transparency. Like if you're actually going to do asynchronous and like fully distributed, then like make it also transparent so people can access anything inside the company almost. Yeah. So I can actually show you like some of our discussions here and how they usually happen. So let me see if I can actually find. Yeah, so basically we're doing like an upcoming view for Todoist, and okay, this isn't that long, but maybe there's something that's more where people actually are arguing. No. Yeah. There's some feedback here. I'm not sure if that is, but basically most of our discussions, they happen like over many days, and it's just like one line, and it's kind of like Galina has created a pretty big post of like the most core user feedback we have received from the users regarding the upcoming feature. And then people come in, and it's maybe like some hours later, some days later, and actually respond to that. And that's based like our default way. And then also we have like messages where we basically, and I hope there's nothing like secret here, where we basically can also like have more informal messages and communications, especially like one-on-ones, or like looping a few people in, if you have like a specific problem at hand. Yeah. And yeah, as you see, like there's a ton of stuff here, and some of the things can kind of like be happen, like the discussion happen like over many months, and not only like a few days. And even like there's people that are restarting stuff, so maybe you have something to add to an existing conversation, and you can actually restart the whole thing. Yeah.
Amir, Emma jumping back in. Okay, so Amir, while people are filling in questions, there's just like a really important question going on in the chat. And we'll let you give a little bit of a product shout out here. Everyone wants to know why Twist is different than Slack. And it's considerably different, right? But why don't you just kind of talk us through how the CEO sees it?
Yeah, I mean, I think like when you actually start to design products, the core philosophy is very important. And for us, like we built the whole product around asynchronous first communication. So for instance, like there's no indicators, there's no like you can't see who is online, who is offline. You can't see who has seen a message or not. And like there's something like that we have thought about adding to the product, but we decided not to, because this was kind of like ruin the asynchronicity of the system. So that's one thing. And also like the thing how you actually do the UI as well. So if you look at the Twist model, it's kind of like very similar to kind of like a blend of Slack and email, but it's actually much more design around like email models than like just having like a one-liner. You actually have like a more bigger form that you need to fill. And also like if we do any kind of analytics on actually the communication model that teams use inside, so it's like much longer than one-liners. There's a lot of text there, and a lot of like like it's basically a much more deep communication model than the standard one. So yeah, I hope I kind of answered this. Yeah.
No. I mean, I think you did, and really what you're hitting on is that we're at such an remote work, because you're not able to have those sort of micro interactions that were discussed earlier with colleagues. Remote work forces an organization to think deeper about communication structure, and for your organization as being one that enables greater workplace productivity, obviously. It sounds like you really took a scientific approach to communication here, leveraging what you know as a distributed company.
Exactly. And honestly, I think also like we and some of the other remote first organizations, like we are actually a bit further on in the future, and then like regular organizations. And like the problems that you actually see in a fully distributed environment spread around the world is like very different from what you see if you're just like US time zones only. Yeah. So that's why I think also like the solution that you come up with will be a bit different, or very different from like the regular ones. And if you look like at Slack, like they actually require people to work from their office. Like they don't even hire remotely themselves. So like how can they actually build tools that enable remote work? That's a question. Yeah.
Well, we have some great questions coming in, guys. There are 11 thoughts with 68 ratings for Amir. By the way, in the general chat, I was so pleased to see some of our speakers engaging. Ryan Chartrand, we'll be hearing from you in just a moment here. And please keep the thoughts coming in the general chat as well. So the first one, do you have any internal rules regarding the right timing on async communication for a productive collaboration? I would imagine that's expectation in terms of response time.
Yeah, I mean the thing, like the hard rule that we have is like you need to get back to people in one day, 24 hours, if it's like a direct message or a direct mention. So that's kind of like the hard expectation. And it's just like if you don't have that rule, if you have like an urgency or like you're blocked by something, you will basically be blocked or could be blocked for a long time. So that's why we kind of have it. Yeah.
Do you have, excuse me, what specific meetings would you consider as worth holding as sync? Weekly planning, retrospective? What meetings do you consider as being worthy of synchronization?
I would actually say that it's kind of like meetings where you can actually build like a rapport with people. So it will be like one-on-one meetings, or like team meetings are also a good approach. Yeah, but honestly, like I would limit the amounts of meetings that you do and like do as much asynchronous as possible. But still, like inside Doist, like we still do meetings, and I think like it's a bad call to kind of like be anti meetings. Like maybe you should just like become better at having meetings. And I think something that we do is kind of like every meeting needs to have an agenda, and then every meeting needs to have actionables, and you need to track these actionables. And just replying that improves a lot, like the meetings, because you're just like babbling around and like discussing non-issues or like something that is critical.
I have a couple questions about that to follow up. How do you, like, what is the criteria for determining whether a meeting's important or not? And how do you onboard a new manager or a new high-level leader in your company to that meeting culture?
Yeah, so that's two great questions. I mean, honestly, like if there's no agenda on a meeting, like that meeting will not take place.
So you have to
And like
create an
even
agenda
yeah, and like
before.
you have to agree that before the meeting, and you kind of have to agree that this is like worth meeting worth taking. So like usually, like if I have a meeting where I have like one item that can actually solve, by just like addressing that in text, I will do that. Yeah, so that's kind of like our criteria, and that's why we don't do that many meetings. And the second question, I kind of like forgot that.
Yeah. So if someone is coming into your organization, let's say a higher level manager, director level, something along those lines, how do you onboard them to this meeting culture, right? Because most people will come from other companies with a different expectation of when to call meetings and how frequent their meetings should be.
Well, here's the truth, Danny. Like we have actually not onboarded any managers or like high levels from the outside. Like
Cool.
we build people inside, and yeah, honestly, so like we haven't really experienced that aspect that much yet. But I hope this will become a problem. Yeah, but on like onboarding, like people onboarding is it's a really tough problem, like for any organization. I think especially remote, and especially like if you do things differently than others.
Here's a great follow-up to that. I found that many problems can be quickly solved by getting everyone in the same room and having a quick chat about it. With async communication, such problems may take longer to resolve. This is my gut feeling. What a great question. What a great thought. How do you respond to that?
Well, I mean, honestly, I think for some people this may be true, but for some other people, like for me, like having time, like one day to think about a problem and then coming back to people usually produces much better like responses and results than like me thinking in a meeting and needing to like provide an answer right away. So I guess like what kind of problem is it? And yeah, I mean honestly, like sometimes we also do meetings if there's like a huge amount of disagreement and like fights. So like if that happens, then probably like calling a meeting and just like having voice and like seeing people's body language helps a lot, because sometimes like in text it can actually become kind of very problematic. So I would like, I'm not anti meetings. I think like meetings have a place. They should just not be like the default way that you operate and that you work together.
Awesome. Here's another one. How do clients respond to asynchronous communication? So, I mean, a lot of what you're talking about is internal, but at the same time, how do you manage that maybe with clients, with your sales team? Are they, located in the markets that they're selling to? How do you make that work?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like we don't really have a sales team, so that maybe explains
Sure.
that. And our support is kind of only text-based and asynchronous. Yeah, so we don't really have that much experience with this. This said, like you have some huge organizations, like Shopify has like over 2,000, 3,000 people working in support in like a fully distributed way. So I'm pretty sure like you can actually do this as well. And even like sometimes like people ask how we actually work with others, like lawyers, accountants, and etc. And like everything like is just done in an asynchronous way. And I think actually people prefer this. Like they will have more time to actually think and respond back. For instance, if we have like a legal issue, like we will not require them to be in a meeting where they need to provide an answer right away.
This next one. How can we cope with notification anxiety? I mean, I think this is like a general sort of social component to building Doist the way you have, right? Is that we live in a culture of distraction.
Yeah, and honestly, I think like it's just there's like some dark patterns, and if you know these dark patterns, you can actually spot them right away when people use them. So like creating addiction and like creating like this anxiety and fear of missing out, like this is actually like part of the plan and part of the design, and we have actually tried to limit that. Of course, I don't think we have fully succeeded, but we want to succeed at this because honestly, like um, I think that the current work environment that we have is kind of very broken, and especially like if you can work all the time and be notified all the time, and you're expected to have answers all the time, it's just a horrible environment, and we want to fight that. Yeah.
I completely agree with you. Someone says product wise, isn't this just a different form of a good old fashioned discussion board? Like when we talked about as you built Twist out, like is it a bit like a message board, but just optimized for internal, for internal use?
I mean, honestly, like I think there's too much focus on Twist. Like, I don't think Twist is kind of like the selling point. Asynchronous communication is selling point. Like, you can implement the same model using like Discord, which is like which some teams do. And I think this will be much better than like using Slack as the default communication model. Yeah.
There was a great question there that I think we just passed. If you could go back up a little bit, I might have missed it. Are there business models that are there some business models which adapt more easily to the asynchronous approach?
I mean, I guess being a product company helps a lot, and not like a service company. That will be my guess. And if you're a service company, I think you can actually also move towards asynchronous communication, but like you really need to get a buy-in from your client. So like if they expect answers right away, if they expect they can call you anytime, um, you know, so maybe there's like also some client education that needs to be done. But if you're kind of like a product company, I think it's much easier to kind of like design your work environment as you see fit. Yeah.
This is a concept that you've really hit on, structuring work around life. Just talk to us about how you, being a CEO of a company like this, like how you have balance in your life and how you're able to live and be a happy person.
Yeah, I mean, something to know is like I have like a baby of like 5 months old, and I also have like a toddler son. So, having this flexibility is amazing because, especially right now, like we're locked inside our apartment, and like sometimes I need to help out and I need to dedicate like 1 hour, 2 hours. And I have no problems actually of doing that because I have very few meetings and I can kind of structure my days as I see fit. In like normal times, so this is kind of like these types times. Like in the normal times, I can spend like 1 hour, 2 hours per day in the morning with my kids without like really having any kind of fear of missing out. I can structure the day. So for instance, like usually after lunch, I'm not very productive. So I don't really like sometimes I just don't work after lunch for a few hours and then I resume back. Yeah, so I think like it gives a lot of flexibility. Yeah, so I hope I answered that.
You did. Someone says what I'm listening to is relieving. I think deep work is the best part of knowledge work. Do you think that there's like a deep work revolution coming one day? For those of us that practice it, it seems so. It's just a no-brainer, right?
Yeah, honestly, like I think in Cal Newport's book on deep work, like actually one of the core arguments, it's kind of like a huge competitive advantage. So I think that the organizations that actually don't adopt this will get outcompeted by those that do. So you basically have, some organizations that are kind of like old-fashioned, that are basically like super stressed. They have unhappy people. They are connected all the time. And then you have like the other group of like new companies that can actually solve really hard problems, like think deeply about stuff. And you also have happier people because people have full freedom to actually plan and live the lives that they want. So, like this movement is actually very new. Like there's very few organizations that are operating on this, but I'm pretty sure like we will create a structure that's much more efficient and much better for both companies and people. That's what we're about. So yeah.
The last question I'll ask, then I have a personal question that I think is very important for our audience, especially as we get ready for lunch. How do you help team members become succinct communicators, not writing novels for reports?
Yeah, I mean, as you can see, like in a lot of these asynchronous communications, written communication becomes much more important, and actually communication in general becomes really critical. So I think like writing is really a core skill of the future, and you basically need to promote that as a core value and get people on board and hire people that are great like writers. And like writing, like bad writing is also like writing a lot. So some people join our organization and think like they need to write PhD reports about an issue. Like no, like you actually need to communicate like as little as possible and like to the point as possible, because else like you basically have like huge amount of information. Yeah, so I hope I answered that.
Absolutely. And just to remind everybody, Ryan Chartrand's up next. Then we'll take a break for some networking and lunch that's coming up in about 40 minutes at 2 o'clock Pacific time. Amir, here's the question. Okay, here's the big question. How long have you lived in Barcelona?
For 4 years.
Okay, more or less the same for me as well. Okay, I live there also. What do you think is the best tapas bar in the city?
Oh, yeah. Like my favorite is kind of called Vivo Tapas, I think. Yeah, I really like that.
Okay. Wow. And
What
that's,
about yourself?
For me, Bar del Pla or Cerveceria Catalana. Those are two, they're pretty much neck and neck. Now, what was the name of the one that you mentioned? What's it called?
I think it's called Vivo Tapas.
Okay, these insider tips. When the world can travel again, everyone can come visit us in. Oh, sure, I know Vivo. Everyone can come visit us in Barcelona. Wow, wow, Amir, thank you so much. We really appreciate everything your organization does. How you don't just have an excellent product line, but you really are leaders in terms of asynchronous communication, in terms of helping people and companies live more productive lives.